Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me.
The heat of Firestar was like nothing ever felt on Earth. It was constant, unyielding, a world bathed in eternal flame where even the air shimmered with a fierce, unrelenting energy. Here, the Flame Clan thrived. The fires that would burn humans to ash were the lifeblood of the Flame Clan, flowing through their veins, feeding their power. Among them, Princess Lena stood as the most gifted of her generation, her mastery over the flames unrivaled. She was destined for greatness, to succeed her father, the Flame King, and lead their people with a hand of both fire and strength. But Lena wasn't like the others. While her family reveled in their power, she felt restless, a gnawing in her heart that not even the hottest flame could satisfy. From the moment she first learned about Earth, the stories of its art, music, and human emotions captivated her. Earth was a world of imperfection and fragility, yet there was something beautiful in that frailty, something she couldn't quite understand. Her people scoffed at humans, calling them weak and short-lived. But Lena felt drawn to them, intrigued by their capacity to create beauty out of the ephemeral. For years, she harbored a secret wish, one she dared not speak aloud, to experience Earth firsthand, to immerse herself in its art and emotions. The more she learned, the more it called to her. And one night, when the heat of Firestar felt suffocating, when her father's expectations felt like shackles, Lena made her decision. She would go. Lena's arrival on Earth. The journey to Earth was unlike anything Lena had experienced. Using the ancient magic of her people, she cloaked herself in human form, leaving behind her fiery appearance and stepping into the skin of a human woman. When she arrived, it was night, the air cool and crisp, a welcome contrast to the suffocating heat of Firestar. The city was alive with lights, a different kind of warmth radiating from the buildings and the people bustling in the streets. Lena found herself in awe of it all. The hum of life, the way humans interacted with one another, their laughter, their whispers. It was intoxicating. She wandered through the city, her heart pounding with excitement and anticipation, and soon she found herself drawn to the art district. It was here that she first saw Ed. He was standing in front of a large canvas, his back to her, a brush in hand as he carefully applied strokes of paint to the canvas. Lena was mesmerized. His work was unlike anything she'd ever seen, abstract, yet full of emotion. The flames he painted didn't look like the real flames she knew, but they carried the same intensity, the same passion. Without realizing it, Lena stepped closer, her eyes locked on the canvas. She could feel the heat of her magic stir inside her, drawn to the raw emotion in Ed's work. It wasn't just the fire, it was the vulnerability, the passion, the longing. It resonated with something deep within her, something she hadn't been able to name before. "You like it?" A voice broke through her thoughts. Lena blinked and looked up to see Ed watching her, his dark eyes full of curiosity. There was something gentle about him, something that made her feel a broken bar safe. "I do," she replied, her voice softer than she intended. "It's a broken bar powerful." Ed smiled, a faint curve of his lips that sent a warmth through her, different from the fire she was used to. "Thank you. I'm glad you think so." Lena lingered in the gallery, watching as Ed continued to paint. She was fascinated by the way he moved, the way he poured himself into his art. It was as though he was reaching for something just out of his grasp, something that could only be expressed through his brush. It reminded her of her own struggle, the yearning for something beyond the heat and fire of her world. Over the next few days, Lena found herself returning to the gallery. She would watch Ed from a distance, quietly observing as he worked, her heart growing heavier with the secret she carried. She knew she was only a visitor here, that her time on Earth was limited, but each moment spent in Ed's presence made it harder to think about leaving. One evening, Ed approached her as she studied one of his paintings. "You've been here every day," he said, a teasing smile playing on his lips. "Do you paint, too?" Lena hesitated. "Yeah, broken bar. I've always admired art. But no, I don't paint." Ed tilted his head, studying her. You have an artist's eye. I can tell. There was a moment of silence between them, the air thick with something unspoken. Then Ed's expression softened, and he gestured toward an empty canvas near his station. Why don't you give it a try? Lena's heart skipped a beat. For a moment, she wanted to say no, to walk away before her secret could slip out. But then she looked at the canvas, the endless possibilities it represented, and something inside her shifted. All right, she said, stepping forward. As Lena picked up the brush, she felt a surge of emotion, of fear, excitement, anticipation. She dipped the brush into the paint and brought it to the canvas. At first, her strokes were hesitant, unsure, but then, as she let go of her thoughts and allowed herself to feel, the fire within her stirred. She let the magic flow through her fingertips, guiding her hand as she painted. Ed watched in awe as the colors came alive on the canvas, swirling together in a way that seemed almost a broken bar supernatural. That's incredible, he whispered. Lena smiled, her heart racing. She had done it. She had created something beautiful, something born from both her magic and her emotions. For the first time, she felt truly free. A growing connection. Over the next few weeks, Lena and Ed grew closer. They spent hours together, painting side by side, their art becoming a reflection of their deepening connection. Lena found herself drawn to Ed in ways she hadn't expected. He was kind, gentle, and passionate about his work. His love for art mirrored her own, and their shared passion created an unspoken bond between them. But as their relationship blossomed, Lena couldn't shake the feeling of unease that gnawed at her. She knew that her time on Earth was temporary, that her people would come for her eventually. And then there was the matter of her magic. She had been careful to keep it hidden, but there were moments when it slipped through the cracks, when a spark would ignite in her palm, or when the flames in Ed's paintings seemed to flicker with a life of their own. One evening, as they worked late into the night, Ed suddenly paused, his brush hovering over the canvas. He turned to Lena, his expression thoughtful. Lena, he began hesitantly, there's something a broken bar different about you. Lena's heart skipped a beat. She forced a smile. What do you mean? Ed set down his brush and took a step closer to her. I don't know. It's like a broken bar sometimes when we're painting. It feels like the fire in the paintings is real, like it's alive. And when I look at you, I see something in your eyes, something a broken bar otherworldly. Panic surged through Lena, but she tried to keep her voice steady. That's just the art, Ed. Sometimes, when we're really in tune with what we're creating, it can feel magical. Ed shook his head, his eyes locked on hers. No, it's more than that. I can feel it. For a moment, Lena considered lying, brushing off his concerns. But then she saw the trust in his eyes, the openness, and she knew she couldn't keep the truth from him any longer. She took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. I'm not from here, she said quietly. I'm not human. Ed stared at her, his brow furrowing in confusion. What are you talking about? Lena stepped away from the canvas, her hands trembling as she summoned a small flame to her palm. It flickered to life, casting a warm, golden glow over the room. I come from a place called Firestar. My people control fire. It's in our blood. Ed's eyes widened as he stared at the flame in her hand, disbelief written across his face. These a broken bar. This can't be real. It is, Lena said softly, extinguishing the flame. I came to Earth because I wanted to experience human life, to understand your art, your emotions. But I can't stay here, Ed. My people will come for me. For a long moment, Ed was silent, his gaze fixed on the spot where the flame had been. Then he looked up at her, his expression unreadable. So all this time, you've been hiding this from me? Lena nodded, her throat tight. I didn't want to lie to you, but I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to lose you. Ed sighed, running a hand through his hair. I don't know what to say. This ice or broken bar a lot to take in. Lena felt a lump form in her throat. I understand if you need time, but I want you to know that everything we've shared our art, our connection, it's real. I care about you, Ed, more than I ever thought possible. For a moment, Ed didn't respond. Then, slowly, he reached out and took her hand in his touch warm and reassuring. "I care about you too, Lena," he said softly. "But what does this mean for us?" Lena shook her head, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "I don't know. But I do know that I don't want to lose what we have." Ed nodded, his expression determined. "Then we'll figure it out together." Lena felt a surge of relief and gratitude, but deep down, she knew that their time was running out. The Flame Clan wouldn't wait forever. Over the next few days, Lena and Ed tried to return to their routine, but something had changed between them. The revelation of her true identity hung in the air like an unsaid word, ever present in their conversations and in their silences. Ed, ever the artist, kept working on his paintings, but Lena could see the tension in his hands, the slight hesitation in his brush strokes, as if he were trying to grasp something that kept slipping away. Lena couldn't blame him. How could she? She had brought magic into his life, the kind of magic that wasn't supposed to exist outside of fantasy. Yet, he hadn't pushed her away. He was still here, still creating, still trying to understand. But as much as Lena wanted to believe they could make this work, a sense of dread began to settle deep within her chest. Her people wouldn't let her stay. They couldn't. And every day that passed, she felt the invisible tether to Firestar pulling tighter, threatening to drag her back. One evening, as they sat together in Ed's small studio, the tension finally reached its breaking point. Lena had been silent for most of the night, watching Ed paint, but her mind was miles away. She could feel something stirring in the air, something unnatural, and it sent a shiver down her spine. She stood, crossing the room to the window, and peered out at the darkened streets below. "Ed," she said quietly, "they're coming." He paused mid-stroke, his brush hovering just above the canvas. "What do you mean?" Lena swallowed, trying to keep her voice steady. "The Flame Clan. My father's emissaries. They'll come for me soon. I can feel it." Ed set his brush down, his brow furrowed. "What are we supposed to do?" "I don't know," Lena admitted, turning away from the window. "I've been trying to think of a way to stop them, but the truth is a broken bar. I don't know if I can. They won't understand why I want to stay here. To them, I'm abandoning my duty, my people." Ed stood and crossed the room to her, placing his hands gently on her shoulders. "Then we'll make them understand. We'll show them what we've built here, what we've created together." Lena shook her head, her heart aching. "It's not that simple, Ed. Firestar doesn't see the world the way humans do. My father doesn't see love and art as strengths. To him, they're distractions, weaknesses." "Then why did you leave?" Ed asked softly, searching her eyes. "Why come here if you knew they wouldn't let you stay?" Lena blinked back the sting of tears. "Because I couldn't live without knowing. I had to see it for myself. Had to understand what it was about humanity that fascinated me so much. And now a broken bar. I've found something here that I never thought I'd find. But it's being ripped away from me." Ed pulled her into a tight embrace, his voice a whisper against her hair. "You're not going anywhere. I don't care what they say." Lena buried her face in his chest, her fingers gripping his shirt as if she could anchor herself to this moment, to him. But even as she stood there, wrapped in his arms, she could feel the flames of Firestar growing closer. The inevitable was coming, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The first sign of their arrival came the next morning. Lena and Ed were walking through the park, the early sunlight casting long shadows on the ground. Everything felt normal, peaceful, and for a brief moment, Lena allowed herself to pretend that they had more time. But then, the air began to change. It grew warmer, hotter, as if the sun itself had moved closer. Lena stopped in her tracks, her heart pounding in her chest. "They're here," she whispered. Ed followed her gaze to the horizon, his face paling as he saw the shimmering heat in the distance. It wasn't just a trick of the light. The air itself was warping, bending under the pressure of an unseen force. And then, out of the distortion, they appeared. 3 figures, cloaked in flame, walking toward them with slow, deliberate steps. They were emissaries of the Flame Clan, sent by her father to bring her home. Their presence was unmistakable, their power radiating from them like the heat of a roaring fire. As they drew closer, Lena could see their faces as stern, unyielding, and filled with purpose. "Lena," one of them spoke, his voice deep and commanding. "It's time." Ed stepped in front of her, his posture defensive. "She's not going anywhere." The emissary's gaze flicked to Ed, his expression unreadable. "This is not your concern, human." "Lena belongs to Firestar. She has responsibilities to her people. She has a choice," Ed shot back. "She's not some object you can just take." Lena felt a surge of both fear and admiration for Ed's bravery. He didn't fully understand what he was up against, but he stood his ground nonetheless. The emissaries, however, were not so easily swayed. They stepped forward, their heat intensifying, and Lena could feel the magic pulsing in the air around them. "You don't understand," the emissary said coldly. "This is not up for discussion. Lena's presence here is a violation of our laws. She must return to Firestar and fulfill her duty." Lena's heart raced as she stepped forward, placing a hand on Ed's arm. "It's okay," she said softly. "I'll handle this." Ed looked at her, his eyes filled with concern, but he stepped aside, allowing her to face the emissaries directly. "You can't force me to go back," Lena said, her voice steady despite the fear churning inside her. "I've made my decision. I'm staying here." The emissary's eyes narrowed. "You are the heir to the Flame Clan's throne. Your duty is not something you can simply walk away from. Your actions are reckless, and they endanger the balance of our world." "I don't care about the throne," Lena replied, her voice growing stronger. "I've found something here that means more to me than any crown or responsibility. I've found love. I've found passion." "Isn't that what our magic is built on?" "The flame inside of us comes from our emotions, from the fire in our hearts." "I'm not abandoning my people, I'm embracing who I truly am." The emissary's expression remained hard, unmoved by her words. "Your emotions cloud your judgment, Lena. Love is fleeting, and humans are fragile. They will never understand the power you hold, and they will never be able to protect you from what you are." "I don't need protection," Lena shot back. "I've spent my whole life being told what I am and what I'm supposed to be, but I'm more than just my power. I'm more than just the Flame Clan's heir. And I won't let you take this from me." For a moment, there was silence, the air between them thick with tension. The emissary's eyes flicked to the other two, as if weighing their next move. Then, with a slow, deliberate breath, he spoke again. "You leave us no choice, Lena. If you refuse to return willingly, we will have to force you." Before Lena could react, the two other emissaries raised their hands, flames flickering at their fingertips. The heat in the air intensified, and Lena felt her own magic surge in response, her instincts kicking in to protect herself. But before she could summon her power, a sudden burst of flame erupted between them. It wasn't Lena's doing, the fire had come from Ed. Lena stared in shock as Ed stood before her, his hands outstretched, flames dancing at his fingertips. He looked as surprised as she was, his eyes wide as he stared at the fire in his hands. "What the hell?" Ed muttered under his breath. The emissaries paused, their eyes narrowing in confusion. "This is impossible," one of them hissed. "Humans don't possess fire magic." Lena's mind raced as she tried to understand what had just happened. Ed wasn't supposed to have magic. Firestar's magic didn't extend to humans or Broken Bar, did it? And yet, there he was, standing in front of her, his hands alight with flames. "It's because of me," Lena whispered, realization dawning on her. "My magic a Broken Bar when we create together, when we're connected a Broken Bar it must have passed to him." Ed looked at her, confusion and awe in his eyes. "Lena, what's happening?" She stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. "I don't know, but a Broken Bar you have my power, Ed. Somehow, we're connected." The emissaries, no longer willing to stand by, moved toward them with renewed urgency. "This ends now," the leader growled, raising his hands as the flames around them surged. But Lena was ready. She reached out, taking Ed's hand in hers, and together they summoned the full force of their magic. Flames erupted from both of them, swirling together in a brilliant blaze of orange and red, a fire more powerful than anything Lena had ever felt before. It wasn't just her magic now, it was theirs. The emissaries staggered back, their own flames no match for the combined power of Lena and Ed. The heat was unbearable, the ground beneath them scorched by the intensity of the fire. But Lena didn't stop. She poured everything she had into the magic, into the connection she shared with Ed. And together they pushed the emissaries back until they disappeared into the distance, consumed by the flames. When it was over, Lena and Ed stood in the center of the park, the world around them eerily quiet. The flames that had surrounded them had vanished, leaving nothing but charred grass and ash in their wake. Lena turned to Ed, her heart still racing, and met his gaze. "You did it," she whispered, awe in her voice. Ed shook his head, his expression dazed. "No, we did it." She smiled, her chest swelling with emotion. In that moment, she knew this was where she belonged. Not on Firestar, not as the heir to the Flame Clan's throne, but here, with Ed, creating something new, something beautiful. The emissaries wouldn't be the last to come for her. She knew that. But for now, they had one. For now, they had each other, and that was enough.